Shri Advaita Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We continue reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, chapter 28, text 45. Ajanati Priyatamam
Ajanati Priyatamam
Yado Paratam Angana
Yado Upadantam Angana
Yushthirasanam Asadhya
Susthir Asanam Asadha
Yatha Purvam Upachara.
Yatha Purvam Upacharat.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The daughter of King Vidarbha continued, as usual, to serve her husband, who was seated in a steady posture, until she could ascertain that he had passed away from the body. It appears that the queen did not even talk to her husband while serving. She would simply perform her prescribed duties without talk. Thus, she did not stop rendering service until she could ascertain that her husband had passed from the body. So Purañjana had become Vedarbhi. Vedarbhi had married Malayadvaj, and then Malayadvaj left the house to perform austerities, and Vedarbhi went with him. And so now Malayadvaj has passed away from the body. Yada nopala bhetang grahad
Yadana Upalabhet Agraho
Ushmanam patyur archati
Ushmanam Pratyu Archati
asit samvigya hridaya
Asit Samvigyan Hridaya
yatha brashta mrigi yatha.
Yutha Brishtamrigi Yatha.
While she was serving her husband by massaging his legs, she could feel that his feet were no longer warm and could thus understand that he had already passed from the body. She felt great anxiety upon being left alone. Bereft of her husband's company, she felt exactly as the deer feels upon being separated from its mate. As soon as the circulation of blood and air within the body stops, it is to be understood that the soul within the body has left. The stoppage of the blood circulation is perceived when the hands and feet lose heat. One tests whether a body is alive or not by feeling the heart's palpitations and the coldness of the feet and hands. So the soul has left the body and the entire body has become cold. Atmanam shochati dinam
Atmanam Shochti Dinam
abandhum viklavashrubi
Abandhum Viklava Ashrubhi
tanav asijya vipine
Sano Asitya Vipine
shuswaram parurodasam.
Suswavaram Parurodasa.
Being now alone and a widow in that forest, the daughter of Vidarbha began to lament, incessantly shedding tears, which soaked her breasts, and crying very loudly. Figuratively, the queen is supposed to be the disciple of the king. Sorry. Thus, when the mortal body of the spiritual master expires, his disciples should cry exactly as the queen cries when the king leaves his body. However, the disciple and spiritual master are never separated because the spiritual master always keeps company with the disciple as long as the disciple follows strictly the instructions of the spiritual master. This is called the association of Vani, words. Physical presence is called Vapu. As long as the spiritual master is physically present, the disciple should serve the physical body of the spiritual master. And when the spiritual master is no longer physically existing, the disciple should serve the instructions of the spiritual master. So service to the spiritual master is done in two ways, Vapu and Vani. Vapu means serving the physical body of the spiritual master. Vani means following the instructions of the spiritual master. And when one is following the instructions in this way, one is never separated from the spiritual master because he's following the instructions which have been given to him by the spiritual master. So service to the Vapu may always not be possible, may or may not be possible, but service to the Vani can be done anytime, any place. Uttishtottishta Rajushe.
Uttishto uttishta Rajrishi.
Imam Uddadi me Khala.
Imam Uddati me Khala.
Dasyubhya Shatra Bandhubhyo.
Dasyubhyo Shatrubandhubhyo.
Bhibhyatim Patum Arhase.
Vibhyatim Patum Arhasi.
O best of kings, please get up. Get up. Just see this world surrounded by water and infested with rogues and so-called kings. This world is very much afraid, and it is your duty to protect her. Whenever an acharya comes, following the superior orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his representative, he establishes the principles of religion as enunciated in Bhagavad Gita. So we can see Acharya. Acharya, he himself is following the instructions of the superiors, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He does not make up his own principles. He's following what Krishna has said, what the previous acharyas have said, and he's teaching by example. Teaching by example the principles of Bhagavad Gita, of Bhagavatam. Religion means abiding by the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Religious principles begin from the time one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So surrender to Krishna. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharmam Parityagya, that abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. And surrender unto Krishna begins by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So it is Acharya. So we can see, so chanting Hare Krishna is a religious principle. It's a Vedic mantra. It is Acharya's duty to spread a bona fide religious system and induce everyone to bow down before the Supreme Lord. So following what Krishna is telling us, the Acharya does not say, follow me. He says, follow Krishna. Srila Prabhupada would always say, follow what Krishna is saying. Follow Krishna. Krishna is saying, surrender to Krishna, surrender to me. So each of us need to surrender to Krishna. One executes the religious principles by rendering devotional service, specifically the 9 items like hearing, chanting, and remembering. So devotional service begins by Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, hearing, chanting, remembering. Unfortunately, when the Acharya disappears, rogues and non-devotees take advantage and immediately begin to introduce unauthorized principles in the name of so-called swamis, yogis, philanthropists, welfare workers, and so on. Actually, human life is meant for executing the orders of the Supreme Lord. And this is stated in Bhagavad Gita 9:34. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam eveshyasi yuktvevam atmanam matparayana. Engage your mind always in thinking of me and become my devotee. Offer obeisances and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So Krishna is telling us what to do. With our mind, we are always thinking so many things. But Krishna is saying, think of me. So when Krishna is saying, think of him, we need to just think of Krishna, because someone may say, oh, I have to think something inside Krishna. I have to think something outside Krishna. I have to think something beyond Krishna. No, we simply follow what Krishna is telling. Krishna is saying, engage your mind in thinking of me. So with our mind, we remember Krishna's words in Bhagavad Gita. We remember Krishna's pastimes, his leelas. We remember Krishna's form, two-armed form, two lotus eyes. He's holding a peacock feather. He has a peacock feather in his hair. He has a flute. He's playing on the flute. So that is thinking of Krishna, following Krishna's instructions as he has given in Bhagavad Gita. Remember, thinking of the deity. Krishna is saying, offer obeisances and worship me. So offering obeisances to the deity, worshipping the deity. And then this way Krishna is saying, be attached to me. He's saying, being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Absorbed in me means completely our mind and intelligence just fixed on how can I please Krishna, what can I do to please Krishna. So being attached to Krishna. And Krishna is saying, surely in this way, one will come back to him. So attached to Krishna. Then how can we get attached to Krishna? Becoming attached to the devotees. Hearing and chanting in the association of devotees. Hearing from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Engaging in devotional service, engaging in Krishna conscious activities in the association of devotees. The main business of human society is to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead at all times, to become his devotees, to worship the Supreme Lord, and to bow down before him. So Prabhupada is saying this is the main business of human society. Well, we have so many businesses, we say I have to do this and I have to do that. But the main thing Prabhupada is saying is we need to think about Krishna, worship Krishna. This is what Krishna is saying himself in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 34. The Acharya, the authorized representative of the Supreme Lord, establishes these principles. But when he disappears, things once again become disordered. The perfect disciples of the Acharya try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of the spiritual master. At the present moment, practically the entire world is afraid of rogues and non-devotees. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement is started to save the world from irreligious principles. Everyone should cooperate with this movement in order to bring about actual peace and happiness in the world. Religious principle is the word of God. Abiding by the orders of the Supreme Lord, that is religious principle. Begins by surrendering to Krishna. Surrender to Krishna begins by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, so that everyone can become happy and peaceful. It's the ultimate benefit for everyone. Evam vilappanti bala.
Evam vilappanti bala.
Vipine nukata patim.
Vipine anugatam patim.
Patita padayor bhartu.
Patita padayor bhartu.
Rudati ashruni avartayat.
Rudati ashruni avartayat.
That most obedient wife thus fell down at the feet of her dead husband and began to cry pitifully in that solitary forest. Thus the tears rolled down from her eyes. Just as a devoted wife becomes afflicted at the passing away of her husband, when a spiritual master passes away, the disciple becomes similarly bereaved. So the disciples, they are very unhappy when the spiritual master passes away and they cry piteously. Chitim daru mayim chitva
Chitim darumayi chitva
tasyam patyo kalevaram
tasyam patuyu kalevaram
adipya chanu marane
adipya cha anumarune
vilapanti manodade.
vilapanti manodade.
She then prepared a blazing fire with firewood and placed the dead body of her husband upon it. When this was finished, she lamented severely and prepared herself to perish in the fire with her husband. It is the long-standing tradition of the Vedic system that a faithful wife dies along with her husband. This is called Sahamarana. In India, this system was prevalent even to the date of British occupation. At that time, however, a wife who did not wish to die with her husband was sometimes forced to do so by her relatives. Formerly, that was not the case. The wife used to enter the fire voluntarily. The British government stopped this practice, considering it inhuman. However, from the early history of India, we find that when Maharaj Pandu died, he was survived by two wives, Madri and Kunti. The question was whether both should die or one should die. After the death of Maharaj Pandu, his wife settled that one should remain and the other should go. Madri would perish with her husband in the fire, and Kunti would remain to take charge of the five Pandava children. Even as late as 1936, we saw a devoted wife voluntarily enter the fire of her husband. Of course, now it is illegal to do that. Earlier, it was the wives, they were voluntarily entering into the fire. But once it started becoming forced, then it is illegal because it was never a matter of force. It was always that voluntarily. This was Vedic times, however. This indicates that a devotee's wife must be prepared to act in such a way. Similarly, a devoted disciple of the spiritual master would rather die with the spiritual master than fail to execute the spiritual master's mission. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes down upon this earth to re-establish the principles of religion, so his representative, the spiritual master, also comes to re-establish religious principles. It is the duty of the disciples to take charge of the mission of the spiritual master and execute it properly. Otherwise, the disciple should decide to die along with the spiritual master. In other words, to execute the will of the spiritual master, the disciple should be prepared to lay down his life and abandon all personal considerations. So Srila Prabhupada actually showed that. He was 69 years old and he showed how to fulfill the order of his spiritual master. He left Vrindavan at that age. People go to Vrindavan to retire when they are old, but Prabhupada left Vrindavan, the spiritual life, the beauty of Vrindavan, he left it. And alone he went to the West to give this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. Why? Because his spiritual master had ordered him to do so. So even at great personal inconvenience, he had no money, he had no connections, he didn't know what he was going to do. Yet, because it was the desire of his spiritual master to fulfill his spiritual master's desire, Srila Prabhupada went to America to spread this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, to spread the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Tatra Purvatara Kaschet
तत्र पूर्वतरः कश्चित्
Sakha Brahmana Atmavan
सखा ब्राह्मण आत्मवान्
Santavyan Valguna Samna
सान्तव्यं वल्गुना सम्ना
Tam Aharudatim Prabhu.
ताम् आहारुदत्ते प्रभो.
My dear king, one Brahmana, who was an old friend of King Purañjana, came to that place and began to pacify the queen with sweet words. The appearance of an old friend in the form of a Brahmana is very significant. In his Paramatma feature, Krishna is the old friend of everyone. According to Vedic injunction, Krishna is sitting with the living entities side by side. So all the Vedas say it, Krishna himself says it in Bhagavad Gita, that he is the Paramatma in our hearts, that he's sitting next to us. The Atma is there, the Paramatma is there. So according to the Shruti mantra, Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakhya, the Lord is sitting within the heart of every living entity as Suhrit, the best friend. So inside one body, how many entities are there?
Two.
Two. And who are they?
Atma and Paramatma.
Yeah, thank you. So it's always Atma and Paramatma. They're separate, individual. So there's two, not one. Thank you so much. That's how there can be relationship. Relationship means two. Service means two. Somebody is serving, somebody is receiving. Love means two. Somebody is loving one, somebody is the beloved. According to the Shruti mantra, Dvasuparna Sayuja Sakhya, the Lord is sitting within the heart of every living entity as Suhrit, the best friend. So we have forgotten that Krishna, our best friend, is sitting right next to us. And because we have forgotten that, we are so much anxiety, so fearful. The Lord is always eager to have the living entity come home, back to Godhead. Sitting with the living entity as witness, the Lord gives him all chances to enjoy himself materially. But whenever there is an opportunity, the Lord gives good counsel and advises the living entity to abandon trying to become happy through material adjustment and instead turn his face toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrender unto. So Krishna, time and time again, he's Paramatma in our heart. Ever since we come to the material world, Krishna comes with us. He is there with us as Paramatma for the entire duration of our, for the entire time that we are here in the material world. And he's always trying to remind us that come back home, back to Godhead. This material world is not your permanent home. Stop trying to, uh, you know, pretend that this is your permanent place. Stop trying to endeavor so much. Try to understand that you need to get out of here. So he comes himself also, as he did 5,000 years ago. He sends his incarnations, his expansions, and he also sends his dear devotees to give us this good counsel that we need to surrender to Krishna. When one becomes serious to follow the mission of the spiritual master, his resolution is tantamount to seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As explained before, this means meeting the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the instruction of the spiritual master. This is technically called Vani Seva. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states in his Bhagavad Gita commentary on the verse Vyavasayatmika Buddhir Ekeha Kurunandana, Bhagavad Gita 2.41, that one should serve the words of the spiritual master. The disciple must stick to whatever the spiritual master orders. Simply by following on that line, one sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this commentary by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur to the verse Bhagavad Gita 2.41 Vyasayatmika Buddhi Ekeha Kuru Nandana. This commentary is the one that made Srila Prabhupada very determined to follow the order of his spiritual master. Spiritual master is saying following the order of the spiritual master is seeing Krishna, is seeing the Supreme Lord. In the Guru Ashtakam also says, Yasya prasadat bhagavad prasada. By pleasing the spiritual master, one pleases Krishna. Because, we may make up some things in our mind and pretend, oh, this is how I can please Krishna, this is how I can please. But if we don't know someone, how can we please them? But the spiritual master knows Krishna, so he can teach us how to please Krishna. Otherwise it will become mental speculation. So that's the reason we need to follow the previous acharyas, the pure devotees, because they know how to please Krishna, so we follow them. So, and then simply by following, one can see Krishna face to face. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Paramatma appeared before the queen as a Brahmana. But why he didn't appear in his original form as Sri Krishna? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks that unless one is very highly elevated in loving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot see him as he is. Nonetheless, if one sticks to the principles enunciated by the spiritual master, somehow or other he is in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because the spiritual master's order is always, the orders that spiritual master gives to the disciple is always how to please Krishna. So the disciple, when he's following the order, his endeavor is, how to please Krishna. Because he's trying to please his spiritual master, but the order itself is what? How to please Krishna. So then, of course, he is in association with Krishna because he's always thinking, how can I please Krishna? How can I please the spiritual master? And so like this, he's associating. Since the Lord is in the heart, he can advise a sincere disciple from within. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 10. Tesham sutata yuktana bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So Krishna is saying, he's the Paramatma in the heart, so he gives the understanding to the devotee, to those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love. Krishna is saying to those who are always worshipping the Lord, he is giving the understanding by which one can go to him. But one may say, but I'm not on that platform yet. Then what to do? Never mind, we continue to hear and chant. We continue hearing and chanting constantly. And then we can be situated on that platform. In conclusion, if a disciple is very serious to execute the mission of the spiritual master, he immediately associates with the Supreme Personality of Godhead by Vani or Vapu. This is the only secret of success in seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead of being eager to see the Lord in some bush of Vrindavan, while at the same time engaging in sense gratification, if one instead sticks to the principle of following the words of the spiritual master, he will see the Supreme Lord without difficulty. So one may say, I'm going to go see Krishna in Vrindavan. I'm going to go see Krishna in Radhakund. I can see Krishna. But the surest way to see Krishna, follow the orders of the pure devotee. Follow the instructions of the bona fide representative of Krishna, of the pure devotee. Srila Bilva Mangal Thakur has therefore said, Bhaktis tvai Sthiratara Bhagwan Yadisya Daivena na falati divya kishora murtihi Mukti swayam mukkulitanjali sevate sman Dharmartha kama gataya samaya pratikshaha. If I'm engaged in devotional service unto you, my dear Lord, then very easily can I perceive your presence everywhere. And as far as liberation is concerned, I think that liberation stands at my door with folded hands, waiting to serve me. And all material conveniences of dharma, religiosity, artha, economic development, and calm, sense gratification stand with her. Krishna Karnamrit 107. So, Bilvamangal Thakur, a great devotee of the Lord, he's saying that if he's serving Krishna, he can see Krishna everywhere, perceive Krishna's presence everywhere. So, liberation, the pure devotee is always already liberated. He's already liberated. That's how he's engaging in Krishna's service. He's completely understood I'm not the body, I'm spirit soul. I have a loving relationship with Krishna. It's my duty to serve Krishna. And he's engaging in that service. So means he's already liberated. And at that point, one can get all the benefits that one gets from Dharma, Artha, Kam, Moksha, and even more. If one is very highly advanced in devotional service, he will have no difficulty in seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one engages in the service of the spiritual master, he not only sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but attains liberation. So following the instructions of the spiritual master, of the pure devotee, the spiritual master is the pure devotee of Krishna. And Bhagavatam also says that great service is done when one serves a devotee. Then what happens is one gets attraction to hear the message of Krishna. And when one begins to hear the messages of Krishna, Krishna who's within the heart cleans all the dirt in the heart. Shanvatam Swagata Krishna, Katha Krishna. So, as far as material conveniences are concerned, they automatically come, just as the maidservants of a queen follow the queen wherever she goes. Liberation is no problem for the pure devotee, and all material conveniences are simply awaiting him at all stages of life. So, wherever the queen goes, her maidservants are there, the entire entourage is there wherever the queen goes. Similarly, wherever there's pure devotee, they will follow the conveniences of Dharma, Artha, Kam, Moksha. Everything follows. So one is encouraged to become a pure devotee of the Lord. That is our constitutional position. That's the position of every soul. Brahmana Vacha
Brahmano Vacha
Vachan
Ka Tvam Kasyasi Kovayam
Ta Tvam Kasya Asi Govayam
Shayano Yasya Shochase
Shayano Yasya
Janasi Kim Sakhyam Mam
Janasi Kim Sakyam Mam
Yenagre Vichachartaha.
Yena Agre Vichicharthaha.
The Brahmana inquired as follows: Who are you? Whose wife or daughter are you? Who's the man lying here? It appears you're lamenting for this dead body. Don't you recognize me? I'm your eternal friend. You may remember that many times in the past you have consulted me. When a person's relative dies, renunciation is automatically visible. Whenever one's dear one dies, automatically we say, oh, what's there in this world? We become renounced, at least for that temporary time. Soon we may come back to our own old habits, but for that time somehow we feel, oh my God, there's what's there in the world. Consultation with the super soul seated within everyone's heart is possible only when one is completely free from the contamination of material attachment. One who is sincere and pure gets an opportunity to consult with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Paramatma feature, sitting within everyone's heart. So the Paramatma is there in our heart. We can communicate with him. What is the qualification? Sincerity and purity. Not that we communicate with our mind and think it's a Paramatma, then that's just our mental speculation. Then we are just listening to our mind. But here, what is being said is the Paramatma, consulting with the Paramatma. So one has to be pure. Pure devotee, he knows. The Paramatma is always the Chaitya Guru, the spiritual master within. And he comes before one externally as the instructor and initiator, spiritual master. So the Chaitya Guru, Paramatma, is in our heart. And the pure devotee outside, the spiritual master, he's a representative of the Chaitya Guru. The Lord can reside within the heart and he can also come out before a person and give him instructions. Thus, the spiritual master is not different from the super soul sitting within the heart. So the spiritual master, he's a servant of Krishna. That's why I said non-different. He's a representative of Krishna. He teaches us how we can love Krishna, how we can go back to Krishna, how we can go back to the spiritual world. An uncontaminated soul or living entity can get a chance to meet the Paramatma face to face. Just as one gets a chance to consult with the Paramatma within his heart, one also gets a chance to see him actually situated before him. Then one can take instructions from the Super Soul directly. This is the duty of the pure devotee, to see the bona fide spiritual master and consult with the Super Soul within the heart. So the spiritual master, the bona fide spiritual master, is a representative of the Paramatma, of the Chaitya Guru. When the Brahmana asked the woman who the man lying on the floor was, she answered that he was her spiritual master and that she was perplexed about what to do in his absence. At such a time, the Super Soul immediately appears, provided the devotee is purified in heart by following the directions of the spiritual master. A sincere devotee who follows the instructions of the spiritual master certainly gets direct instructions from his heart, from the Super Soul. So the woman is saying that it's my spiritual master, because we were saying, right, that the husband also means the spiritual master and the wife was the disciple. So when the disciple is sincere, thus a sincere devotee is always helped directly or indirectly by the spiritual master and the Super Soul. This is confirmed in Caitaniya Caritamita, Guru Krishna Prasadipaya Bhakti Lata Bija. So Krishna, he gives instructions from outside as the pure devotee, as the spiritual master, and within the heart as the Paramatma. Guru Krishna Prasadipaya Bhakti Lata Bija, Lord Chaitanya says that by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, one receives this Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed of devotional service. It's by mercy of both Guru and Krishna. If a devotee serves his spiritual master sincerely, Krishna automatically becomes pleased. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasad. By satisfying the spiritual master, one automatically satisfies Krishna. So this is the way. Thus the devotee becomes enriched by both the spiritual master and Krishna. Because one may say, oh, how do I please Krishna? Please the pure devotee, please the devotees of Krishna. This is how we can please Krishna, serve the devotees. The Supersoul is eternally the friend of the living entity and always remains with him. The Supersoul has always been ready to help the living entity, even before the creation of this material world. It is therefore stated here, Yenagre Vichachartha. The word agre means before the creation. Thus, the Supersoul has been accompanying the living entity since before the creation. So as soon as the living entity is in the material world, the Paramatma accompanies him. So the Paramatma is there together with us from time immemorial, ever since we came to the material world. And he will continue to be with us as long as we are in the material world, right up to the time when we go to the spiritual world. Once we go spiritual world, there's no need of Paramatma. Why? Because Krishna is there personally. We can see him face to face. No need to see him in Paramatma feature. Krishna is there, his expansions are there, Narayan expansions or Krishna himself. So Krishna is so kind. He's our best friend that he never leaves us alone. Never. Always with us. Constantly. We say we want space. And Krishna is there always with us. He just stops speaking to us when we don't want to hear him. Or even if he hears, we just block out the noise. Block out his instructions. Api smarasi chatmanam.
Api smarasi cha atmanam.
Avigyata sakham sakhe.
Avigyata sakham sakhe.
Hitva mam padam anivichan.
Hitva mam padam anivichan.
Bhauma bhogarato gata.
Bhoma bhogarato gataha.
The Brahmana continued, my dear friend, even though you cannot immediately recognize me, can't you remember that in the past you had a very intimate friend? Unfortunately, you gave up my company and accepted a position as enjoyer of this material world. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:27, Ichchadvesha samuttena dvadva mohena bharata sarva bhutani sammoham sarge yanti parantapa. Ichchadvesh, Ichcha and Dvesh. O sign of Bharat Arjun, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, overcome by the dualities of desire and hate. So this is an explanation of how the living entity falls down into the material world. We ask, oh God, why you put me in the material world? Why you created the material world? Krishna created it for us. It was our desire to enjoy this material energy and our hate, our envy of God. So for us to pretend or imitate that we are God, he created this material world. In the spiritual world, there is no duality, nor there is hate. The Supreme Personality of Godhead himself expands himself into many. In order to enjoy bliss more and more, the Supreme Lord expands himself in different categories. As mentioned in the Varaha Purana, he expands himself in Vishnu Tattva, the Swamsha expansion, and in his marginal potency, the Vibhinamsha, or the living entity. These expanded living entities are innumerable, just as the minute molecules of sunshine are innumerable expansions of the sun. The Vibhinamsha expansions, the marginal potencies of the Lord, are the living entities. When the living entities desire to enjoy themselves, they develop a consciousness of duality and come to hate the service of the Lord. In this way, the living entities fall into the material world. So Krishna, he expands himself. So there are different types of expansions. One of his expansions are personal expansions, Swamsha expansion. They are the Vishnu Tattva. And others are we, the Jivatmas. We are also his expansions. We are his energy. We are separated. Vibhinamsha. And so there's living entity souls. We are the souls. We are also come from Krishna. And the souls are unlimited. Everywhere we see there is souls. Innumerable. Prabhupada is giving us example how there's so many unlimited molecules of sunshine everywhere. So the souls are there. But what happens is, we souls, when we desire to enjoy separate from Krishna, when we begin to hate the service of Krishna, then we are put here in the material world. In the Prema Vivarta it is said, Krishna Bahirmukha Hana Bhoga Vanchakare, Nikatasta Maya Tare Japati Adhare. The natural position of the living entity is to serve the Lord in a transcendental loving attitude. So every soul, the soul is the living entity, and the natural position is to serve Krishna out of love. It's not a service of force or of some employment. No, it's a service out of love. When the living entity wants to become Krishna himself or imitate Krishna, he falls down into the material world. So this is the reason we are here in the material world, because we want to imitate God. We want to become God. So then God tells us, okay, you can't do that in the spiritual world. You do that in the material world. So here, each of us is trying to imitate God. We are trying to become God. Since Krishna is the Supreme Father, his affection for the living entity is eternal. When the living entity falls down into the material world, the Supreme Lord, through his Swamsha expansion, Paramatma, keeps company with the living entity. In this way, the living entity may someday return home back to Godhead. So we are part and parcel of Krishna. We are Krishna's children. Krishna is the Father. So Krishna has natural attachment for us. You know, like a child may say, I'm going alone by myself to the park. Don't follow me. So then the father, he may stay a little away that he can see the child, but the child cannot see him. Because he has affection for the child. He's concerned. Or something bad might happen to the child. So he covers himself so the child can't see him, but he can see, he's there. Similarly, Krishna follows us in his expansion as Paramatma, his Swamsha expansion as Paramatma.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, Shilpa, our natural duty is always to, remember God and chant. And then when we have fallen into this world, that means we have some karam to do, right? Because we are here.
Yes.
So how do we know what is our mission? I mean, how do we realize our mission? So like you kept saying about, we have to, there was a reading where we read that we have to execute our mission. How do we know? I mean, we are so much everywhere, in this world now. It's like we have so many things to do and we don't know what our real mission may be, right?
Well, the mission of human life, the goal of human life is Prema Pumarthamahan, revive our love for Krishna. That is the goal of human life. Now, whereas if you are asking duties, then Krishna says, do your duty, but do it as an offering to me. Because that's what he tells Arjuna, that whatever position we are in, we have specific duties. And we
Right.
continue doing this for the pleasure of Krishna. At the same time, hearing and chanting, because hearing and chanting is also our duty to Krishna. Helping spread the Krishna consciousness movement is also a duty to Krishna because it's Krishna's instruction. Yare dekha tare kaha Krishna upadesh. It's an instruction given by Lord Chaitanya. that okay?
Yeah, maybe. Hare Krishna.
So we continue to hear, we continue to chant,
Yes.
we continue to do our duties for the pleasure of Krishna. Because acting for the pleasure of Krishna, that is the position of every soul. That's the natural position of every soul. As we are just hearing, no? Service to Krishna.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. By misusing his independence, the living entity falls down from the service of the Lord and takes a position in this material world as an enjoyer. That is to say, the living entity takes his position within a material body. So we have a free will. Krishna never interferes with our free will. And our free will is what? We choose Krishna or we choose to be away from Krishna. So when we are with Krishna, we are serving him out of love. Just like a mother is serving the child, no? Or the father is serving the child, right? Or the child is serving the parents. It's all out of love. So when the soul says, no, I don't want to serve Krishna, I'm going to become God myself, then what happens? We enter in this material body. We come in the material world. Wanting to take a very exalted position, the living entity instead becomes entangled in a repetition of birth and death. So what we do is we are thinking, oh, I'm going to imitate God. I want to become God. I am so great and I'm powerful. But instead, we get entangled in this cycle. Action, reaction, birth, death. We do some karma, we get reactions. Then like this, we create more and more bodies. Like that, we continue taking birth and dying. He selects his position as a human being, a demigod, a cat, a dog, a tree, etc. In this way, the living entity selects a body out of the 8,400,000 forms and tries to satisfy himself by a variety of material enjoyment. The supersoul, however, does not like him do this. Consequently, the supersoul instructs him to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord then takes charge of the living entity. So we want to enjoy the fruits of our activities, and this is why we are getting so many different bodies, because we want to enjoy. So we get different bodies to enjoy. But the super soul is not like that. Material energy, she belongs to Krishna. He does not take pleasure in material enjoyment. He is enjoying on the spiritual world, spiritual platform. So, but unless the living entity is uncontaminated by material desires, he cannot surrender to the Supreme Lord. So in our heart, there are so many material desires that stop us from surrendering to Krishna. So the more we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, the more our heart will get free of these material desires, and the more we will be able to surrender to Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita 5.29, the Lord says, Bhoktaram Yakya Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarva Bhutana Gyatva Mam Shanti Mrachati. The sages, knowing me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attain peace from the pangs of material and miseries. So this is the peace formula. Krishna is telling us how we can become peaceful. Prabhupada said this is the real peace formula. We are trying different ways to become peaceful. But we simply have to understand Krishna is the controller. Krishna is the proprietor. Krishna is the enjoyer. Krishna is the best friend of every living entity. If we can understand this, then we can become peaceful. That Krishna is the only controller. He's the only owner. He's the proprietor. Because he's the proprietor, he can control. We are thinking we are the proprietors. And that's why we are trying to control, but we are unable to control. And that becomes karshati, a struggle for our existence. Krishna is the best friend in everyone's heart. He is each and everyone's best friend. The Supreme Lord is the supreme friend of everyone. However, no one can take advantage of the Supreme Friend's instructions while making his own plans to become happy and entangling himself in the modes of material nature. When there is creation, the living entities take on different forms according to past desires. So we get our body depending on our desire and our karma. Based on that, we get different bodies here in the material world. This means that all the species or forms of life are simultaneously created. Darwin's theory stating that no human being existed from the beginning, but that humans evolved after many years is simply a nonsensical theory. From Vedic literature, we find that the first creature within the universe is Lord Brahma. Being the most intelligent personality, Lord Brahma could take charge of creating all the variety found within this material world. So, all the species are created at one time. It's not that one species is created, then from there it evolves into another species. No, 8,400,000 species are created at one time. Lord Brahma is the first created being. And we are here in the material world because we want to imitate God. We want to become God. Only if we can understand that, oh, I have a loving relationship with God. I need to stop imitating Him. I need to stop wanting to become God. And then we can be situated in our loving relationship. Then how can we come to that point? We need to hear from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, chant Hare Krishna mantra. The more we hear, the more we chant, the more our heart can be purified, the more our consciousness will be purified, the more we can be situated in our natural position. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you want to add or comment anything?
No, but then we just understand that what is our natural thing is that to serve Krishna,
Yes.
our dharma. And when we are not doing that, then we fall into this material world.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Thank you so much. Shila Prabhupada
Hare
ki
Krishna.
jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki